Again. Okay, so what we want to do is make a program that'll calculate that chi-square test statistic. The way we're going to do that is start out by making a new program. So we'll hit on the PRGM button. We're going to arrow over to where it says New. And we'll hit an Enter there. Then we have to type in the name of a program. What I'm going to call it, you can call it yours whatever you want, is I'm going to call it CHI for chi and then S for square. There's my S, where's my Q? And then we're calculating a test statistic, so I'll put T and then I'll put S on it. Again, you can call it whatever you want, but this is what I'm going to call it. Then you hit Enter, and then you're going to type in your program. Now, first step in the program is actually to tell it to clear the home screen. So we're going to hit the program button, then we're going to arrow over to I/O, and then you want to go down until you find where it says Clear Home. Okay. What this will actually do in the program is once you run the program, it'll wipe out whatever's on the screen, so you can have a nice fresh screen, just so you're not seeing a bunch of random stuff all over the place. And so I'm going to say Clear Home. I'll hit Enter. It'll jump me down to another semicolon, or another colon, sorry. And now I want to have the program prompt the person for some input. So I got to hit the program button. Got to go over to I/O again. I'm going to use Input, and then I have to give a prompt for what we want to have inputted. So I'm going to hit second and alpha, so I can use the alphabet again. I got to do a quotation marks, and what we're going to want to have it prompt for is the observed values. So the observed values here, I'm going to call OBS. So O, where's B? There's B, and then I'm looking for S, which I'm blind. There we go. And then I'm going to use a colon at the end. I'm going to put a space. It'll just make it prettier when you look at it later, and then a end quotation mark. Then we got to get out of the alphabet, so we can use a comma. So you hit the alpha button, then hit the comma there. And then we need a place to store this input. So I'm going to hit on second and the number 1, and that should put L1 on the screen there. So it's actually going to store this data in our list number 1, which if you use this thing the way I'm saying, that's actually where the data is coming from too. Then I'll hit Enter. Now what we need to get is our expected probabilities. So we got to do the same thing here. We got to say, let's hit Program. Let's go over to Input and choose that by hitting on Enter. Then we're going to turn on the alphabet again, so second and alpha, and then we'll do a quotation marks, and I'm going to write E X P for expected. I'm going to put a space, and then I'm going to write P R O B. So this will take me a second because I'm a little blind here. P R O B. So this is for expected probabilities. You could make this program using expected counts, but this will be easier to do this way. And then we'll put a little semicolon and a space and then parentheses. And then we're going to get out of the alpha lock there. So hit the alpha button again. There we go. I'm out of that. Then I need a comma, and then we need a place for this to live. So I'm going to hit second and L2. So that's where that data will be stored on our calculator. Then we'll hit Enter. And then we're prompted for some more stuff. So what we have to do now, right, is actually get the expected counts on our calculator. So if you went back to the first video to see how to do this by hand, we need expected counts. Well, this next step is actually going to do this for us. So the way I do the expected counts is I'm going to do second and hit the stat button. And I arrow over to math. And I'm going to go down to sum. And I just hit on Enter there. And now we need our expected counts to come from our expected probabilities. But to do that, we need to know our total sample size. So we got to say second and L1. This is actually going to find out our sample size in the program. Then we'll do times. And then we want to multiply our sample size times all of our expected probabilities. So then I'm going to do times L2, second and L2. And what's going to be needed is to save these results. So we're going to save these results in our list number 3. So what's neat is at the end of the program, after you've used it and you got the test statistic, if you wanted to know what the expected counts are, you can go look them up in list number 3. Then I'm going to hit Enter. And now I got to use the sum command again. This is the next step. Will actually calculate this test statistic for us. So I got to go ahead and do second and stat. And I go over to math again. And so this is going to look like the last video. I'm going to choose sum. I'm going to do a parenthesis, Okay. The only difference between this and the last video that showed you how to do this directly was I used L1 and L2. In this case, I'm going to use L1 and L3. So I get that sum command, I got a parenthesis, and then I got to type L1, so second and the number 1, minus second and L3, which is the number 3. I do a parenthesis, I hit on square, I do divided by, and then I got to divide by L3, so I do second and the number 3 again, and then I put an end parenthesis, and then I'm going to hit store button, and this isn't a list anymore, so I can just store this into a regular old variable. So I'm going to store it into A, so I'll just hit alpha and the A button and hit enter, and then I just want the results to be displayed somehow. So what I'll do is I will use the display command, so I'll hit the program button, and then I'll arrow over to input output, and I will go down to display and hit enter. And now we have the option of how to do this. I'm going to put a little bit of a prettiness on it. You don't have to do this whole step here, but I'm going to turn on the alpha lock, and I'm going to try to type in chi-squared equals something, so our prompt is sort of labeled. I don't know how to get the chi symbol on there, but I can certainly make an X, and then if I turn off my alpha, I can put a square on it, and then if I want to, I can put the equal sign on it. And the quickest way I know how to get to it, because I don't see it anywhere on this part, is to do second and 0, and if you arrow up through all these symbols here, eventually you will find an equal sign. Again, this part isn't totally necessary. You do need to do part of this step, but give me a second. This is going a bit slow here. Here we go. There's an equal sign. I hit enter. All right. And then I'm going to do alpha and 0 to put a little space there. Then I got to do alpha, and I got to put the end quotation marks. Whoops, didn't get alpha and the end quotation marks. All right. Now I just have to hit the comma, and now I have to tell it what to display, and I have to display whatever A is, so I do second and A. Now, you can actually just have this say display and just put the letter A after it. You don't need this stuff in the parentheses or that comma for this line. Okay? But then you do need to hit the enter key after this, so it gives you another little colon there, and that's going to run our program. All right, that is our program. Okay? So I can quit out of this. All right. Now, how would I go about using this? Well, what you can see on the screen in that little bit of space there is I give you a table that's got some categories. There's A, B, C, D, E, F. There's some expected probabilities, the 0.1, the 0.2, the 0.05, and the 0.15, 0.14, and 0.1. And then there's some observed frequencies. Now, how we go about doing this is we want to put those observed frequencies in L1. Okay? So I got to hit on stat and enter, and so I've got some stuff in here already. So I'm going to go up on L1, I'm going to hit clear on that. That's going to clear that guy out. I'm going to type in my observed frequencies. So I'll put 12 and 14. Now, it's not necessary to actually know or actually use L1. It's just necessary to know where you're putting these numbers in the list. But if you put them like this, everything will match up and it'll be easier to deal with later on. So those are my observed frequencies that I put in there. Okay. Now what I got to do is come over to L2. I'm going to clear that out. So I go up to the name, I hit clear, and I arrow back down, it clears it out. Now I'm going to type in those expected probabilities I have right there, which is 0.1, 0.2, 0.05, 0.15, 0.4, and 0.1. And if someone's giving you these things, those should add up to 1, and I believe they do. So 0.1 plus 0.2 is 0.3, plus a 0.05 is 0.35, plus another 1.5 would be what? 0.35, 0.45, 0.5, and then the last two are also a 0.5, so I get 1 there. Now you'll notice L3's got some stuff in it. I don't really care. I just care about what's in L1 and L2. So I'm going to quit out of that. Actually, before I go, notice there is stuff in L3, and it's a 2, 3, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. I mean, it doesn't matter that it's there, but just we're going to go back and look at this in a second here. Just notice that something's going to change. So I'm going to quit out of this, so second and quit. Now to use the program, I just hit on the program button. In this case, I'll use chi-squared SQTS. I'll hit enter. Pops up the name. I hit enter again on it. Now it's asking for where the observations are. Well, we put those in L1, so I'm going to say second and L1. I'll hit enter. It's asking for the expected probabilities. Those were in L2. I'll hit enter. It calculated the number, and everything's all done there. Okay, so that's the chi-squared test statistic value for us. It's really big in this case, but I made it really big because I picked strange numbers. Just one last thing. If you remember from the other video, and eventually you'll see it in class, we're comparing some observed values to some expected values, but not the actual expected probabilities. If somebody ever asked you for what the expected probabilities were, you can actually go back under stats and look at your lists, and L3 has the expected counts that you're actually doing a comparison to sitting right there. May or may not mean anything to you right now, but eventually it will. Okay, so that's how you can make a little program that will calculate that chi-squared test statistic for you. All right, see ya. Bye. Later.